That's his prerogative, And so the 4 years that we've had here with LeBron, we hope turns into another 8 or 10. So that's how I'm looking at it. All four of our guys, or three of them, the so-called big three, okay, all three of them have opt-outs, and it's their choice. They've created the flexibility. They'll think about it, and then sometime I hope by next week, we both have to do some business here. They got to do some business, and we got to do some business. We're not walking around on eggshells anymore like we were during the regular season and not talking about it. We need to talk about it now, and that's the way it is. And so, I love LeBron. He knows that. He knows how we feel about him, but he's a winner. He's a guy that's that takes it a lot differently, and it manifests itself in different ways. And so you really need to give him time to just sort of get away. I sent an email to everybody, right after the game. I didn't go in and it just you cannot give a team solace that just won back-to-back championships. And part of the email was, the storm's going to pass. I guarantee you it's going to pass. Anybody who lives in Miami knows that storms and rain showers, they pass, and then there's sun. It could be within an hour, but this storm will pass, and it'll take a couple of weeks. There's a lot of broken pieces on the ground, and we're going to leave them there. And for about 10 days, we'll walk around them. And then after that, we'll start picking them up, and then we'll hope there's no more breakage.
What would you prefer? Is it safe to say? Would you prefer them to just bypass the option and go in and you operate from the tax exemption?
Whatever they want to do, however we can keep those guys together. Okay. However we can keep those guys together, Bird, McHale, Parrish together, Worthy, Johnson, Abdul-Jabbar together. Jordan, Pippen, and Horace Grant, or another, together. Duncan, Ginobili, Parker together. Okay. Shaq and Kobe together. Kobe and Gasol and another together. Whatever it takes, Mike, to keep them together, we're ready for it. That's our objective. That's my push to them. All of those guys stayed together, and in their worst moments, and I just mentioned to you a number of the times that they lost, they just allowed management to retool. Let's bring this back together. This doesn't happen often, and let's stay here, and let's try to keep this thing going.
And I guess the only difference between some of those eras and this one is you're operating in a very different environment.
Right.
In terms of cap and tax. Those guys essentially, and you would know better than I, that you could retool without having to worry about some of the things that you need to
It was not easy back in the 80s either. I mean, free agency, we signed the first free agent, I think, in the history of free agency when Jerry Buss gave Mitch Kupchak, a $1.8 million contract, which what everyone, Jesus, for 3 years, And back in that day, there was a mechanism in players' contracts where you could actually sacrifice money to bring other players in. There was a mechanism that you could actually, while you're under contract, take less to get somebody else to come. I don't know when that ended. I'd have to ask Andy that. There was a year when all that stuff ended, but there was a mechanism back then where you could do that. So, every single year, Jerry West, it was McAdoo 1 year, and then it was A.C. Green in the draft, and then Byron Scott in the trade. And then it was Michael Thompson via trade, So it's up to us and to myself to be able to go out and operate within these rules, okay, and to be able to retool and complement, those players. And so we've been able to do that the last couple of years, and there's no reason to think that we can't again. I explained to you, and I think all of you know what the triggers and mechanisms are based on what they do and what they don't do. And so we'll use those mechanisms and those triggers to influence other players to come to Miami. I guarantee you there will be other guys wanting to come down here. Who they are, we'll find out.
I had one topic that's fueled sports talk over the last couple of weeks has been the notion of a fourth star player at a high salary joining your big three. Do you harbor that notion as something which is realistic at all, or is that the ultimate of long shots in your mind?
That's a pipe dream. but everybody thought 2010 was a pipe dream too. So I don't harbor that thought. I'm being realistic right now, dealing with what we have in front of us. So that's not where we're headed. That's a possibility, but that's not what we're thinking about today.
Pat, from where you sit, will you have a meeting with you guys and say, here are our options? Do you feel comfortable saying, if you take a big haircut,
I think they know that. I would not ask that. I think their agents are very aware of all of the machinations for them, and I don't know if they're going to or when they're going to, but if they do meet, I believe they will be presented coherently and intelligently by their agents with all the possibilities, and then they'll go from there. But it isn't something that I'm going to sit in a room and get down on my knees and say, hey, I wouldn't do that to a player. That's a voluntary thing on his part. So, it's going to have to be something that he's going to say, hey, I want to do this because of that. We'll take them right the way they are today. That's it. Continue this thing going.
I'm sorry. You've been around Dwayne now as a player. As long as you were around Magic, long as you were around even Alonzo was a player. At this stage of his career, what do you see in terms of him being able to give you moving forward? How much are you concerned that this year might be a sign of a gradual breakdown?
All of those players that I've coached that got into their 30s, back in those days, Jerry West retired when he was 34, 35. Allen Iverson retired when he was 35. I mean, there's a number of guys that probably could have gone on longer that for some reason or other retired at young age, great players. And you have to reinvent yourself. What reinventing is a concept of what does he have to do mentally and physically and spiritually, to get him to another level at that age of 32. Obviously you've chronicled, the injury path for him. He does have pain, but he doesn't have the debilitating injury that could end his career. So it's a matter of, is there something that will allow him to become physically better? And at the same time, the roles, in all players' careers change. But he's too smart, he's too good, he's too talented to not be able to play a major role for years to come. And so those changes, he and I will sit down and we'll talk about.
Could adding a more polished three-point game be one change for Jordan?
Well, sometimes it is, but some players who are drivers, slashers, dunkers, medium-range jump shooters, the mechanism on how you shoot the ball has to change. Will he be a high percentage James Jones type of, Mike Miller type of three-point shooter? I don't know, but I can guarantee he'll make one when it counts. But that's not where, he's not going to be spotted up out and standing in a corner somewhere. He's going to be, slashing to the basket, posting guys up, getting out on the break, that kind of stuff. That's been his game for 11 years now.
Because of his health problems, could one of those changes in his roles eventually be coming off the bench, or is that just something?
That's not been discussed. We'd probably have to get into a room with boxing gloves to have that discussion, which I would not want to do. But no, that's not been discussed.
Pat, with Dwayne, you think you're way more mentally on him?
What's that?
You think you're way more on him mentally than physically? Your mind's telling you to do things, but your body just...
Well, I will divulge just one of the things that was a common thread that came out of most of the meetings. Mentally exhausted, mentally fatigued. And I understand that. I don't accept it. I believe that if you go to the finals 4 years in a row and you play 150 games more than the other teams, that's where you want to be. So you got to prepare yourself for it. Maybe they didn't know how to prepare themselves for 4 years in a row in the finals. And so if in fact that's something of an excuse, or you can use it as a crutch, then that's what it takes. It takes a real special team, and it takes a special mentality and preparation and focus to be able to do that and also win a championship. And so if the players are saying that this was a tough year, you know, and it was a grind, and it's every day, every night, well, welcome to the NBA and to the world of, you know, world championship basketball. You know, they should all sit down and have a discussion with Bill Russell, you know, about going to winning 8 straight world championships. Of course, the league was different back then. I agree, but still the mentality is the same, you know. But I saw that. I saw that in the team. You know, I saw the mental fatigue at times, and I thought we were hitting stride when we beat Indiana in the game 6. And when we had those 2 games in San Antonio, the aberrational first game that caused a fourth quarter anomaly, and then the second game win, I said, we're right, we're in a good place. And then we ran into a buzzsaw. That happens at the top.
Other guys on your roster, would you like to have another year, another season with Greg Oden to see where he may be next year? Is that something you want to continue?
We talked about it, and we know him physically better than anybody else would. And so I don't know what's going to happen with Greg. I just know that we have a protocol that probably would be upgraded next year to protect him from not being able to play. And so, you know, so what we did this year kept him ready. And when we started to play him, when Eric started to play him, there were plans to play him every night, about 8 minutes or 12 minutes. And it was a severe back injury that knocked him out. He could not play, not because of his knee. He could not play because he had a back injury that prevented him from doing that. That's now being calmed down and getting under control. And so, you know, next year we would raise the protocol on him and see if he could have, you know, a different approach in practices to get him ready for games. But, you know, I've seen him play in practice, and I've seen him play in some games, and you just don't want to walk away from that kind of a talent.